This was a good one. So today's episode is with Eli Grambling, and he's the founder of E3 Nutrition. And I was connected to him through Brad Lord, so I knew it was going to be a good conversation. And it was way better than I could have imagined. And not that I even anticipated that it was going to be a good one, but it was such a good conversation because it hit me at the core, especially with some things that I've been fighting with, as his words just really rang true to me. And so a couple things that I want you to highlight and think about is word choice. We talk a lot about it, and think about the subtle difference between you work out to eat versus eat to work out. Huge difference, but it's a subtle difference in word choice. The other things that he talked about is capture what you do, incremental changes. He used the quote, "Don't worry about getting bigger, worry about being better," from Kathy Truitt from Chick-fil-A. And then also the last thing is find peace in what you do and allow God to do the work. So ladies and gentlemen, Eli Grambling. Well, Eli, it's very good to see you. I know we talked on the phone the other day, and I always like to see people. I like to be in person, but we're a little too far from each other.
Right. Yeah.
Not
It's
too far.
definitely no, not too far. And in person is definitely preferable, but if we can at least get face to face through Zoom or Skype or Microsoft Teams or however everybody's operating these days, that's a little better. So glad
Exactly.
to be here.
Well, and it was one of those things where virtual literally shifted overnight because Zoom was out and some of these other things were out, and Skype. I don't know if you even remember Skype, all
Yep.
those things were out. And then when the dreaded C word came across, everybody got real comfortable real fast doing stuff on virtually.
Right. Yep. So that's where we're at today.
That's all right. But you know what? What it's done is we always look for the bad, or I look for the good in the bad. And it's created where I've had way more connections because of this than I would have otherwise.
Yeah. And I don't know, I was talking with someone about the other day about this, and I don't, just talking from my Christian perspective, that whole era, 2020, just gave me so much hope. When in reality, I think for some people, it kind of like sent them down a spiral. But for me, I was like, I have nothing to look to right now except Jesus. So like that's what it did for me, like as far as like that connection. So not only did it allow you to bridge connections elsewhere with other people through these means, but for me it like just strengthened my faith during that. So it was like trying to find the positivity in such a dark time. There's definitely some to be found.
Oh, there always is. I'm a huge fan of the Apostle Paul. And when you read through all of his stories of what he endured, and here he is in prison, and actually the basement of prison, in more than likely the sewer up to his armpits in nastiness, and he's singing praises. And if you can do that, then like that's my hope, is to have that kind of attitude and be that grounded that even when it's awful, that I can do that.
Exactly. Yep. That's the prayer.
I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, you and me both, brother.
Because there's stuff I'm not in the sewers, and I struggle sometimes.
All right.
But for my listeners, I want to introduce them to you, Eli Grambling. And before we get started, I go into all the ins and outs of who you are and let you get started. I like to play a little game. It's called Would You Rather.
Oh man, let's do it.
All right. So would you rather freeze time or go back in time?
Oh man, that's so tough. That's a great question. Right now, so I have a 9-month-old, and it's funny, like we'll talk back and forth, me and my wife, about how every stage is more fun, but it's also like you kind of just want to freeze him in how he is right now, just so innocent and pure and just fun loving, and he's not quite walking yet, so we can kind of keep him in a small place. So, but I don't know. I mean, I think I'd rather freeze time. Like God has been so good to us, and we're just so blessed right now in like every aspect of life. So like, it's just really good right now.
No, that's awesome. Awesome. So live without music or TV?
Oh, I could dump the TV. I gotta have music.
All right. What music do you like?
Dude, I like anything. I will listen to anything. Like my Spotify Wrapped every year is such a random playlist. Like I'm proud of how random it is. I guess my roots, I grew up in like 90s country. So that's kind of what I tend to always fall back on. But yeah, during the summer, I like to listen to reggae because I grew up in Florida and like that just puts me back, on the beach and I don't know. So I'm all over the place.
No, that's good. Would you rather read a book or listen to one?
I would rather listen to one, but I want to get better at reading. I want to read more so I can enjoy it more. I've recently started reading a little more. You and I kind of talked about that the other day on our phone call, but I would rather listen to one. I wish my answer was read one.
Well, it's the listening. So I did really, really well for probably 15 years where I grew up and unfortunately I bragged that I went all the way through college and never read a book. And I don't know why I was bragging about that. I guess I thought it was funny, but it's not. But then I got into reading and I really enjoyed it. And then honestly, the last 2 years, I've had a really hard time sitting down and reading a book. Like I'll read some, but then so I've had to lean more towards listening, which you're still absorbing the content. I just find it challenging right now to sit down long enough just to read.
Yeah. Life's just so busy and you feel like so many other things are taking priority. But yeah, I find myself in the same situation.
Yeah. And I'm reading one now that you might be interested in. It's called The Teenage Brain, or listening to one. I'm not really reading it. I'm listening to it. But since you're into the physiological aspects of the body, it is absolutely fascinating. Now, I know you have a 9-month-old, but they will be a teenager before you know it. It happens
Like
that fast.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting, especially since you're all into the body and nutrition and how the body reacts. Okay,
Right.
the last one that's fun. Would you rather have pizza or tacos?
Tacos, hands down.
What kind of tacos?
Some type of like street taco style. So like a lean protein, like a shrimp or a chicken with some cotija cheese, some red cabbage, lettuce, Greek yogurt on top, sub the sour cream. That's it. And some guacamole. Gotta have the guac.
Okay.
Man, I could house some of those.
Is there a place in Macon that you venture off to get good tacos?
There's actually a place in Warner Robins, which is just south of here, by Robins Air Force Base, called the Taco Shed. That place has really good tacos. Shout out Taco Shed, sponsor me.
There you go.
No, it's really
put
good.
An affiliate link. Let's see what we can do.
No, it's street style. It's really good. So yeah.
Yeah. I use that one because I like them both. And depending on the mood, I can crush it. So my son's 14 and plays offensive line. So him and his buddies, I'm still going to challenge them to have a taco eating contest. Not that I would win.
Yeah.
My cousin, however, when we were growing up, he ate 17 Taco Bell hard tacos.
Wow. That's
that doesn't
impressive.
Sound like a lot. That's a lot of Taco Bell in one sitting.
Yeah. That's impressive.
Yeah. Well, Eli, thank you for coming on today. And we were introduced to one another through Brad Lord, who by the time this one comes out, I think he'll be 2 episodes before you. And I've known Brad for a couple of years now, just through social media. I've never met him in person, but I feel like I know him and we've had plenty of good conversations and I think the world of him. So when he said, you got to talk to Eli, I was like, done, easy.
He is a good guy, man. Real good guy.
So Eli is a husband, a dad, a business owner, a coach, a CrossFitter, or a CrossFit athlete, I guess is what you would call it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I like CrossFitter. It sounds more Florida. And most importantly, a servant of Christ. And I love that that's the first thing that you put on your Instagram description. So when you look at your life, and the reason why I wanted to have you on is because the podcast is called Pathways to Greatness. And the whole purpose of this is to share other people's stories and other people's pathway as they're venturing towards greatness. And the biggest thing that I want people to remember is just not to quit, that everybody's path is going to have twists and turns, rocks, roots, setbacks, switchbacks where you think you're going backwards, but you're actually making progress, all these different things. And so I wanted to have you on to be able to share your story and what you've done and what you're doing now, because that's everybody's story. But before we get started with that, is how would you define greatness?
That's a good question. I think I heard like a little take on Instagram the other day about, it was probably like a sound bite set behind one of those like motivational type videos. And it was, what does it do? What do you have to do to become rich? And the guy steps back and goes, well, how do you define rich? How do you define being wealthy? Is it having a stable job, a family that loves you, or none of that and a lot of money? So I think greatness can be defined in a lot of ways. And it's, what are you finding value in defining greatness in what you currently do? Like, and there's got to be some type of metric to that. Am I baselining, like with my nutrition company, is greatness defined as like we had myself and 0 employees and 10 clients, and now we have 7 employees and over 200 clients? Like, is that where greatness ends, or do I want to keep going? So I think I think the answer is different for everybody. For me personally, I guess greatness would be kind of tied to that. What is wealth for me? And that's number one, serving Christ properly. And if I'm great in that, then I feel like all the other things will kind of fall into place in his plan. So whereas I might define greatness as one thing, what he defines as greatness for me is even better. So I think that's kind of tied to my story in life too, is I've tried to settle so many times and it didn't work out for me. And on the front end, I'm like really confused and frustrated and like, where do I go now? And when in reality, it was that true, this door closed and a better one opened. So that's a long, I guess, answer of how I would answer that, but it's kind of how I feel about that.
Sure. And that's why I love the question, because you said it, everybody's got a different definition of it. And it's also, I think it depends on when and where you are in your life of how you answer that. And I really liked, and I want people to hear what you said, is that your definition of greatness may be one thing, but Christ's definition of greatness far exceeds anything that we could ever imagine. And that's so well said. And it's something that I'll continue to think about. So I had not thought about it in that light. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for asking the question. You know, I don't get really challenged that much in those type of like deep thoughts and having to answer them this quickly. So yeah, for you listeners, Jeff and I did not prep these or prompt these. So I appreciate just like the realness of this and what you've got prepared for today.
Awesome. Well, Eli, why don't you give everybody a little bit of your background of, kind of what brought you to prior to starting E3 Nutrition and kind of what that pathway looked like.
Yeah, so I've always been involved in athletics, played baseball my entire life growing up. And then in high school is when I really started playing football and was pretty good at it. And so I decided to stop baseball, which is not something I'd really recommend. There's a lot of data out there today that says focusing on one sport may not be the best thing, but that's what I did. And it worked out for me. I ended up getting some scholarships and ended up playing football at Mercer University here in Macon, Georgia. So I've always been around athletics and participated in that. In 2014, I think it was my sophomore year at college, I found CrossFit, and it's not something I could really do full time or even as my main source of exercise because of college football. That took up all my time. So when I finished college football, and let me backtrack as far as like the body and nutrition. During college football, I played quarterback, did not get the playing time I thought I deserved or that I had imagined I would at that level, and ended up transitioning to H-back, which I'm standing right now at 5'11", 180. So for me to play Division I H-back meant I needed to gain a lot of weight and still be pretty athletic. So I ended up going all the way up to 225. Is not the right weight for my frame at all. Ended up tearing my labrum and had surgery the Monday of Thanksgiving week after our last game. So I knew like about food and how it could affect your body, but I didn't know how to do it properly. So the whole time I'm in college, the whole time I'm in high school, I'm having these big dreams. I'm playing college football and I'm just eating whatever's in front of me with no real purpose. Or I was looking back, I was definitely overweight in high school, which probably as far as my senior year, which probably prevented me from getting recruited as much. I was short and slower because I was overweight. So I could run people over, but at running a 5 flat, that didn't do a lot for a 5'11" guy. So anyway, transition out of that, start doing CrossFit and really enjoyed it. Decided to go get my level 1, which allowed me to coach in 2017. And again, same thing. I just knew that I needed to work out really hard to kind of overcomp for my diet. And I just knew if I wanted to look leaner and get healthier, I would just eat less cookies or work out harder or something. So in that thing, I was in that realm, I should say, I was working out to eat versus like today, I would tell you I eat to work out. My food fuels what I'm about to go train for. So anyway, I played college football, got into CrossFit, and through all that, I finally kind of something clicked for me. I participated in an online challenge as far as nutrition goes and counting macros and understanding the depths of what can change your body, and just fell in love with it. I was like, this works. And so I just started telling people about it. It affected my body. It affected my performance. I was like, hey, here's exactly what I'm doing. Why don't you try it at your weight? Like we would tweak a few numbers and stuff. And they started seeing crazy results. And then they were like, dude, you really need to start a business. And I never in my mind thought about starting a nutrition company. Never. Like it was just something I loved doing. I loved helping people. It's kind of like your faith in Christ. Like it's changed your life so much. You just want to tell people how good it is. Well, that's what I was doing with nutrition. And finally had some like business owners, some entrepreneurs say that you need to monetize this. And it wasn't because I was like money hungry. It was just because like it was starting to take up a lot of my time. And this was something that I enjoy doing and I never saw myself not doing it. So I was like, I can really help other people in this. And so E3 was born last June. So we're not even a year old. And it is just, that's kind of what I was saying earlier. God has just tremendously blessed this. And it's something that I just love. It's kind of like my niche, I guess. And it just, that's where we're at right now.
No, it's all. So what's the story behind E3, the name E3?
So it just came to me one day in the bathroom, like just brushing my teeth before work or something. And it's educate, empower, elevate. So I'm a big believer in empowering others and like teach a man to fish versus just fish for him. So we are really grounded in the education side and giving you the power to make nutritional decisions that are going to elevate your life long term. So we're really looking at like the sustainability side of this. Like we're not going to tell you this is a 30-day quick fix and hey, good luck the rest of your life. Like we're more of a slower on ramp. And I tell people that on the front end just to be very transparent. But what we're doing is setting you up for long-term success. This isn't just like, oh, I start E3 on Monday, I've got to binge eat Sundays because I'm never going to be able to eat good again. No, this is a very sustainable methodology that we're trying to impact people with. So that's where the brand comes from.
That's awesome. Well, you said quite a few things. So we'll rewind a little bit to a couple of things. One, I'm a big believer in the words that you say and how powerful they are. And you said something, and you probably know you said it, but I'll remind you, is when you said you used to work out to eat. I hear that all the time. I've probably said it way too many times. And now you shifted to eat to work out. And that's a very subtle difference, but it's also a very powerful difference because of what the subject and the verb is there. Is that you're the first way, work out to eat, you're living to eat.
Right.
That's your focus, that's your desire, that you're going to eat and you're not really making good choices. That's why you're working out.
Right. Yep.
And the other way around is you eat to work out. You're fueling your body to be more efficient in the workout. Now, how much when you guys are coaching your clients around like word choice, do you get into that depth of discussion with them?
not so much like specific word choice, but more so like a mindset shift. Like I'll have people say on the front end, I just had this conversation the other day. I'm not going to pull it up on my phone, but it was more so around me talking to them about, I want you to change the way you view food, change the way your whole mindset is. This is not a diet. This is a sustainable methodology of how to eat. Because what we're doing is we're asking people to kind of track their intake and giving them allowances within the 3 macronutrients, carbs, fats, and proteins. And what I'm trying to emphasize to people is like, you are already eating these 3 macros. You every day you ate a certain amount of carbs, a certain amount of fats, and a certain amount of proteins. Now you just have the education to know which amounts of those are moving you closer to or further from your specific goals. That's all we're doing here. So that's like the mindset shift, is like, this is not you're locked in for 90 days with E3 and these are the small parameters and there's no freedom. It's like there's a small amount of discipline here that creates enormous freedom in your life and in what you choose to eat.
Now, what's your focus on small incremental changes versus that wholesale change that so many different things that you see on social media and the fads that have come and gone all the time?
Yeah, that's huge. I'm glad you said that. And that, like, so my other job is I'm a lean consultant, kind of like an engineering consultant for continuous improvement. And one of my main, one of my main presentations when we're looking at process improvement is titled The Power of Incremental Change. And so what we do with people in E3 nutrition, and we learn this based on client feedback and some just different learnings from our first couple months in business. We used to give people those macronutrient parameters on day one. And what we found was that a lot of people were trying to adhere to those immediately. And that's just not realistic. That's that sudden change where people say, I'm failing at this. This is not working out for me. It's just like any other diet. It's just like any other nutrition program. So what we did is we took a step back and we've created a 3-phased on-ramp plan that takes anywhere from 21 to 30 days or less. And what we tell people in what we call our launch email is that the pace of this is completely up to you. You can, if you feel comfortable completing all 3 of these phases in the first 5 days, and we also have a mutual feeling that you're there, like you're at phase 3, then we'll proceed with the rest of this program. But that 3-phase on-ramp plan is what's building that massive base, that deep foundational base for you to sustain this long term. So we learned very quickly that the power of incremental change is 100% the way we want to go and what's helping people long term.
Yeah. And I want people to really pay attention to this. And we're going to tie a bow in all of this at the end, because all of this, just in what Eli is sharing, will change your life, not just your nutrition. If you apply the same principles that he's talking about with nutrition, you can change anything in your life that you want to change if you follow those principles. And so when you go through that, have you seen a difference based on the clients? Let me read, like my thought went halfway and then my brain and my mouth weren't connected. So when you have different clients, because everybody's different, have you seen, or what differences have you seen with people on their on-ramp to success versus if they fail right off the bat?
Right. Let me try to give a non-nutritional example for so everyone can listen or understand, I guess. Maybe with technology, like if I were to give a newborn a cell phone, which today it's mind blowing how active they are with phones, and ask them to look up something on the internet. Well, first they'd have to understand how to turn the phone on. Then they'd understand how to navigate the different screens. Then they'd understand how to select the right app. And if the right app wasn't there, they'd have to understand how to go to the app store and search it and download it. So there's micro steps in between these major process steps. Then once they got within Safari browser or within wherever they were looking at, they could proceed to finish the task. Hey, go watch a YouTube video. There's so many micro tasks that have to happen before I hand someone who's never held a phone to do something like that. So that's kind of what we're doing. And what we've seen is that they're able to break down these major process steps in this life change into minor process steps. That's basically what we're doing for them, and saying, hey, we need you to weigh and measure everything you eat. That's not really what we're doing. But if we were to say that, well, first you have to know what a food scale is. You have to know what units you're supposed to be using for liquids versus solids. So those are like the small types of things that are like life related with the phone example, and then nutrition, of how we're slowly bringing people in. And the difference has been enormous. And it's allowed people to really build that base again, like kind of what I talked about earlier on how to sustain this long term. And I remember what you said a minute ago, and it came to me about the words and the mindset shift we're having. This is kind of that conversation I had with the client the other day. And this was a post that we posted yesterday on social media. The quote says, "This isn't about perfection. This is about steady progress. What are you doing today to be better than yesterday?" So that's the mindset shift. I'm not going to be perfect every day in whatever I'm trying to do. Lose weight, eat better, read more. You can't read a book tomorrow if you don't read one page. So like that's the mindset shift we're trying to give to people. And we've definitely seen more success in the plan when we've instilled these small things on the front end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you were talking, it made me think that bad habits don't happen overnight, and neither do good habits.
Yeah.
But we expect the good habits to all of a sudden take over and move on. I'd heard a quote, so it's not one of my original, that habits eat willpower for lunch.
Oh,
Which is so true, right? I mean,
yeah.
if you're just habitually that you have to have a cookie after every meal, it's going to beat willpower every time, because you're going to see them sitting there and going, well, it's just what I do. I mean, you probably deal with habitual issues with clients all the time. And people think it's the little things that add up over time that can derail a whole nutritional plan.
Right. Yep. You definitely see it.
So when you started E3, you talked about some entrepreneurs that encourage you to start. Was there anybody that you modeled your company after that you had been admiring of how they started and what their focus was?
Jeff, I don't think so, because I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, it happened so fast that like I was overwhelmed pretty quickly. And one of those people I'm talking about is a really good friend of mine. He's one of my hunting friends, CrossFit buddies, accountability partners. And he's a very successful entrepreneur. And he told me about this. It's called the Georgia Small Business Development Center. And it's a free service given to you, paid for by the University of Georgia. And they have regional offices. And there's an office in Macon that provides completely free, like, small business consulting. And so I went and met with them, and they helped me out some for sure, but it's kind of just been trial by fire and just being patient. And we've really tried to take I heard a quote from Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, like, don't worry about getting bigger, worry about getting better, and bigger will take care of itself. So the reason we've hired more people so fast is because I wanted to keep the culture we've instilled at the beginning of holding people accountable at a smaller level. So we're able to keep our coach to client ratio pretty small because we've been able to hire some really good people and spread that out and start a new session every month rather than just letting people join at whatever time, because we want, more than anything, we want to preserve the culture we've created and what we know works based on client feedback. Everything we make is data-based decision-making, whether it's from a narrative or actual data. So more than anything, I want to preserve who we are and not sacrifice that for just blowing up. Like, I could churn and burn clients all day long and make a lot more money than we're making right now, but that's not who we are. And I never want to sacrifice that.
Now, when you started, did you sit down and write out a vision, a mission statement, your values? Have you done that?
So, you and I were talking last week about the Simon Sinek book, Start With Why. And I didn't realize we had kind of done some of that informally on the front end. And I created all that when we started, but I didn't realize what I was doing at that time. Like that was like who we are. And we were defining our mission and why we existed, and letting that come first before what we do and how it works. And so we did all of it on accident. And then once I realized, like after reading some of these good leaders' work, like, oh, that's what they're talking about. Well, now we need to put that on the forefront and like explain to people. Like we had kind of hidden it, but I was like, no, this is who we are. This is why we do what we do. But I need to get better at setting like milestone type goals for business growth. And then I need to practice what I preach as far as like breaking that down into micro steps. I've started to do some of that now that I've hired Brad to help run our social media, and we have great coaches who can handle a lot of the day-to-day stuff. It allows me to kind of step back and be strategic. But yeah, it's one of our first posts on Instagram as far as what the 3 E's are and how those are our like 3 building pillars. So it is available, and we have a link in our that I think you're going to provide at the end that talks about who we are and what we do, and it's like one of the first things in there. So
Yeah, and that's what so many businesses either forget, or they do it just like you said, is some people will just do it as an exercise because they need that tab on their webpage. But if they don't believe it and live it, then what does that mean? And that's something that I work with individuals, not just businesses, is what's a personal vision. And I'll challenge you now is to do one for your family. Do one where you can start to guess, like you have a personal mission statement, and then you measure all activity around, and then you set one in place for your family, because it's the same thing, is that if you don't know where your family's going, then how do you make decisions every day?
Yeah,
and that's really one thing I wish I would have done when my children were younger, because, so many times I made poor decisions because I didn't know, like I thought I was making good decisions, but when I look at it, it wasn't a decision based on my values or based on a vision or a mission that I thought I had for myself and my family.
Yeah, that's gold, man. I value that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So when you look at getting started, what were some of the big challenges that you had just getting started? I mean, I know you said you didn't know what in the world you were doing, but what were some of the big challenges that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think for me, it was really more of a mental thing and a kind of just who am I, like who I found, what's my identity, like what was my identity going to be? That was where I really struggled. So I don't know if Brad told you. So when I graduated college, I played a lot of music, like country music, out and about, and wrote songs. Like I've got songs all over Spotify, but it was never like, I knew, like deep down, I knew I was never going to pursue music long term. Like I just knew that. Even though I was writing all this music and playing these shows, like just deep down, I knew it was like just something I was going to do for fun. But maybe to like others, it was like, hey, Eli was this athlete his whole life, and now all of a sudden he's pursuing music. And I really wasn't, but it may have looked like that to people. And maybe for a short period of time, I thought that's what I wanted to do. And again, deep down, I was always conflicted. Like, I don't think I've ever told anybody that, but like, I was always conflicted with like what God had for me. And I never had that like secure peace about like, this is what I'm going to do. So then when the nutrition thing came along, and again, it was not something I planned, prepped, God just dropped it in. It was like, hey, this is your story and you're pretty good at this, and other people are latching on. This is probably something you ought to run with. And then I was like, well, now what are people going to think of me? Like, he's just like this, he just gave up on music, and now he's doing nutrition now. Like, are they going to think it's just a fad? And so I talked to my wife about it. Like, it's something we prayed about. And I was like, I just finally came to that realization of, number one, it really doesn't matter. Like, I really honestly hate the term perception is reality, even though it's true. Like, it is. I mean, I guess I hate the term, and I hate how real it is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I had to wrestle with, is like, what are people going to think of me? Like, is this, because if this becomes my identity, like if I go all into this, then it kind of will become my identity outside of Christ. Like, and it's funny because I'll be at the grocery store, I'll be ordering to food, and people are like, so what are you going to order here? Or like they're looking in my grocery cart. It's like crazy, dude. Like, because of how strong we came on with the social media and how much it's growing, like, I cannot do anything in an eating realm without people like expecting me to be healthy, which is a great accountability tool. So I think for me, other than me never even considering myself as an entrepreneur and struggling with like building a business, it was like the mental side, and like, what is my identity outside of Christ? What are people going to think of me? And how do I create success out of this?
Man, that is so good. And it's important for people to pay attention to that, because of the big thing that you shared about, you knew deep down inside that wasn't the direction you needed to go. You didn't know where you were gonna go, but you knew that just wasn't right. And how many times have we all had that, but we just do the best job we can to convince ourselves that that's the path, because we think that everybody else is expecting us to go down that path.
Yeah.
And that always leads, for me, it's led to, depression, frustration, anxiety, because you're not headed in the direction you want to go, because you're looking at the extrinsic value that other people are putting on it versus the direction that is right. And I bet you that was a good feeling once you fully committed to that E3 idea. Of then, it just, like you said, it just became easy. Like, the people were just flooding you because of you were in your flow.
Yeah, I think it's just like people, you're not going to fool people. People know and can see straight through you. And so you're either real or you're not. And if you're not real, you can only last for so long in that. And I think for me, like with the whole music thing, I wasn't willing to, number one, leave my family and go on these long tours. I wasn't willing to move to Nashville. I wasn't willing to play a lot of the places that it was going to take to play. I wasn't willing to quit my engineering job to pursue this full time. So like, that took out, like, that eliminates me from a large portion of that group, because they're all doing those things. And so people saw like, well, he's just a part-time guy. Like, that's all he is. Like, and for me, I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm okay with that, because like, I'm just doing this for fun. But even it didn't come across as that on the front end, maybe, to some people. So when I just did who I was and turned who I was into E3, it just felt so organic and real and natural. And that, again, I think I maybe have said this in a different way earlier in this discussion, but I knew I was never not going to be living this way as far as eating healthy and training. So I was like, well, let me just help others do it with me. So that's kind of it. That's where I guess the easiness came from. Not that I'm that talented or anything like that. It's just, this is what I do daily. Like, this is literally what I do. And I saw a guy as an entrepreneur, and I don't think he's like one you should really follow from a godly perspective, but he came up on like my suggested reels one time. And it was just like a quote, like one of those motivational type quotes, I think is why it came up. And he said something like, his partners were like, you need to start putting content out. You need to start pumping content out. And he was like, well, I don't know what to do with content. And he said, so we hired a social media guy. He was like, hey man, I need some content for today. And he was like, I don't have content for you. I'm trying to run this business. So the social media guy just started capturing everything he did, just basically documenting his life. And that was the content that blew up like crazy. So that like really registered with me. Just capture what you do, and people are going to buy into that. People are going to relate to that because you're not that different from everybody else. There's a lot of people just like you who are struggling with the same things, desiring the same things, wanting to pursue the same things. So even though the way you achieve that greatness may not work for them, there's something in there that they can latch on to. And some people can latch on to the whole thing and ride that wave with you. But so that's what we try to do, is be authentic and just, this is what we do. So that's why E3 has felt so natural and just right, at peace, I guess.
Yeah. The other thing that you said again that I love, because you had the self-awareness and the discipline to be honest with yourself, is you knew what you were willing to do and what you weren't willing to do. And I hear so many people say, well, I can't do that, or, oh, that's just so hard. And again, word choices, is it so hard or you just don't want to do it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll force people like, oh, Mr. Motivator. I'm like, no, just be honest with yourself. I don't care if you want to do it or not. Just
Right.
don't make an excuse to soften it to yourself so you can believe and negotiate that you just don't want to do it. And, eating, oh, I just can't eat that. Or I don't, it's like, no, just say you don't want to.
Right.
And then once you own up to it, then you can change it, because you realize like, well, I'm just saying I don't want to do it because I just don't want to do it.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Just be honest with yourself. Be transparent to yourself, and that'll show to others.
For sure. So if you had to, so I'll ask you another question, and it's a two-part, really a three-parter. The first part is, if you could go back and tell Eli, so maybe it's in college, tell Eli 3 things that you wish you would have known, what would they be?
Mm. I think I'll go back to kind of that high school, college.
Okay.
And it relates to like my work ethic, and just some of it relates to my work ethic and just life in general. I would always tell myself to serve Christ more, because even though I may have thought I was doing that in those times, I was failing so bad. And I did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done. Like, there's no doubt about that. So like going back and be like, that is so stupid what you're about to do right now. And you don't realize it, but I promise you it's so stupid. There's that piece, is I would really have walked tighter with my faith. The second thing is, I think a lot of things, this is a blessing and a curse. And I do not mean this in an arrogant way at all, but a lot of things came really easy to me. So I did not try. I didn't put in that extra effort to take them to the next level. And there are things within that, and a specific thing is, I took the ACT one time, got a really good score, had 100% paid scholarship to anywhere in the state of Florida. So I was like, I'm not taking it anymore. I don't need a higher score. When in reality, if I would have just tried a little harder and taken it again, I would have gotten even more money to like these out of state schools, and it would have just helped me out a little bit. But because of that score, I didn't even apply for any like random scholarships that were out there on the internet that required a 100-word essay or 10 hours of community service or fill out this questionnaire. And I really like that kind of stings, because my parents worked so hard. I got some scholarship money to play football at Mercer, but it wasn't like, my parents still sacrificed a lot to send me to an out-of-state private school. So like I would go back and say, and I think the same thing applies to like my football and weightlifting back then, is I was good enough to get where I got, so I didn't try any harder. So walk closer with Christ in every aspect of your life, work hard. And a third one, that's a good question. I think, I should have known this. My third thing I would tell myself is, you've got to live in the moment. Like, I remember, it was funny, like I moved 3 hours away to Mercer from North Florida, and I would miss like the smallest things, like coming home from high school and just being able to sit in the same room with my family and watch TV, watch Walker, Texas Ranger till we went to bed. Like, that is such a simple, everyday, minute thing that you do, but when you can't do it, you miss it. So, and I try to tell kids, like, I've had a lot of opportunity to go back and speak to high school kids or, whoever. And I'm like, what you have right now is some of the best 4 or 5 years of your life. And you just don't even know it. Like, right now is what you'll miss 15 years from now. and you're living it. Like it's happening right now. Take advantage of that. So those are my three.
Okay. Awesome. 3. So the next question, what are 3 questions you'll ask Eli in 5 to 10 years?
Hmm. Are you where you thought you'd be? And if not, why? And if not, what are you going to do to change that? So kind of that 3-part thing. Like what did I set myself up for the family goals that you mentioned earlier, the career goals, whether it be a certain metric within the business growth or financially, or another kid or another dog or piece of land, or like however you set your metric, like did you accomplish that? Why? And then what are you going to do to change it moving forward?
Those are great. And both of those are great, no matter where you're at in life. Like the first 3 things that if you didn't do that before, everybody should start answering those 3 statements that you gave yourself previously. They could start today. And then those other questions also set the course. So I'll ask you this last one. How are your daily activities now improved on what you told yourself before? And then is it working towards those questions? Like, do you know, if you're saying, did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? Do you know what you want to accomplish?
Yeah. So touching on those first 3, I definitely like to surround myself with like-minded individuals. That's something my mom always taught me, is don't be unequally yoked. And I did too much of that. So I try to really surround myself with like-minded individuals when it comes to the church and Christ, whether that's accountability partners or reading a daily devotional with somebody. I also try to serve in the church in several different areas because that keeps me accountable. I'm on the praise and worship team and help lead a small group, but that's to help me. That's really like, it's selfish. It's because I need that level of accountability. That's where I've improved there, I guess, from what I would tell myself. With the work harder thing, there's a quote that I came across in my nutrition certification that said, motivation comes after action, not before. And that has like stuck with me so hard, because a lot of times I will be just nonchalant and careless. And I'm like, you know what? You just got to take one small step, like one small tiny piece of action that's going to yield this smallest result. And that's going to propel you forward farther than you would have imagined. So I've been really trying, as far as the work harder piece, when I don't feel like working harder, just get up and do something. Do one small tiny action that's going to like fuel you with motivation. And that's just going to, then I just start working. And then the third piece was live in the moment. I really try to be more present and not like, well, what do we have this weekend? Like even at that small of a scale, like, no, today's Tuesday. Like let Tuesday be Tuesday. And I try to bring it down to that micro level so that I can understand every day and think about things. And especially with Boone, who's 9 months old, like I don't, like you want that next phase because he can walk, and I don't have to carry him everywhere. He can say dad and mean it and not just be a syllable. And like, but it's like, but then he's not a 9-month-old anymore. Now he's an 18-month-old, and that's 9 months ago, bro. Like, so that's what I've been trying to do. And then that last piece of that 3 question is, I'll catch myself like, I have these massive goals that I want to take the business to, that I dreamed of like 3 months ago. And I'll catch myself sometimes be like, hey bro, where are you at with that? Like, I got to get to work. Like, then it's like, there's that motivation, like create an action plan, go on Excel and make a dang Gantt chart that gives you milestones and timelines. And so I did that last Thursday. So it's just like, it'll hit me at random times and be like, do you really want to I think that's a question people really need to be honest with themselves about. And I tell this to high school athletes all the time. You say you want to play college athletics, but do you really want to play college athletics? Because I don't think you understand what it takes. If you don't absolutely love it, you will hate it and you will quit. So I try to like remind myself of that with the business or whatever goals I've set for myself. Like, do you really want this? Because if you do, you're going to do what it takes to get there.
Man, that's good. I thought we were just going to talk about nutrition. Now I'm all fired up. I mean, again, everybody that's listening, rewind it, start it over. I know I joke that I can appreciate the extra downloads, but I'm telling you, you've got to listen to it again, because there's so much that Eli's sharing, that if you just take, again, just a little piece of what he's talking about and apply it, you will start to see those incremental gains in your life, in accomplishing more, doing more, being more. And it's all just, it's basics. I also loved how you talked about not being unequally yoked. And so many times I've always heard that in relation to your spouse and who you're going to be with. That holds true to your friends. I mean, surrounding yourself with the right people is so critical and so important. And so I'm sure in the CrossFit gym, you don't want to hang out and be the strongest guy in the circle. How does that push you to be the strongest guy in the circle? You want to be either middle of the pack or towards the back. So that way you're having to lift more, do more, move faster, all that. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely right. And it's the timing on that statement is funny. The two of the best male athletes we had at my CrossFit gym just moved out of town. So like I needed them there to push me and get to the next level, and they're gone now. So you got to find motivation somewhere though. But yeah, you're right. You need to surround yourself with people that are better than you in whatever you want to pursue. One thing I posted the other day is I was doing like the Olympic movement, squat snatch, and I'm not good at them and I hate them. And so I need to do more of them. That's my process. If I'm not good at something or I hate seeing it in the programming, that's what I need to be working on in my free time. Because there's a reason I don't like it. And there's a reason I'm not good at it. So that's another like metric I use for myself is if I'm not good at something or I don't look forward to doing it, I like force myself to do more of it.
Sure.
But
And that's one of my phrases that I love to say is that your weakness caps your potential. Is that until you get through that, and everybody loves to focus on their strengths because it's easy and it's fun, but the weakness is what's holding you back. You're not going to be as good of a well-rounded athlete if you avoid the things that you don't like to do. If you're on a team, a sports team, if it's, all these different parts, that if you avoid those constantly, you're never going to get where you want to be. And you'll always question yourself. And I know that's for just a fact. I normally say, that's just my opinion. It's truth. I believe it to my core because it's held me back. All these different things that I avoided because I didn't like to deal with it or whatever, it held me back. And until you work through those things and start improving, just incremental improvements, like you said, it's an improvement. You're still getting better. And
right.
That's what's important. So Eli, if somebody was to reach out, what's the process of getting on board? What are some of the things that you like to ask people when they first give you a call to say, hey, look, I want to talk to you about improving my nutrition?
Yeah, I think my number one piece of advice for people is, and I'll say this, is to become aware. What are you currently doing? What's your benchmark? Where are you at right now and what's holding you back? Because if I don't know where you're at and what's holding you back, then I don't know how to address that and make you better. And you have to also define your goals. Where do you want to be? Like why is where you're at right now not satisfactory for you? And we also ask people to answer that question in the first phase of their on-ramp plan. I think it's like step 3 of phase 1 is define your why. Why are you signed up in this session right now? Because if you don't understand that and you don't know where you want to get, you're going to fail in this. We're not that hardcore with people, but that's kind of the reason behind putting that principle in there. But the first, if we were talking the strategic, like how our session works, is they would fill out an initial assessment questionnaire that kind of answers a lot of that. Simple things: gender, height, weight, age, fitness level. What are you struggling with? What are your goals? And then from there, we follow up with a phone consult where we address all those and present what we do. And then if the two things marry up, then they start in the next session. But yeah, we really try to understand and cater to that person as an individual. And I also like, I need a better word than client, because I don't really like using that word, because we really try to build relationships with people, because we want to understand them and coach to their specific needs. So I feel like that the word client like is just like someone who's paying me for a service,
Right.
which they are, but like you're more to me than a client. Like you're
Right. Sounds
so
too transactional more than relational.
right. And like I said earlier, like we really like that's who we are. We pride ourselves in the relational aspect and the accountability piece. We have three levels of accountability in our program to make sure that your needs are getting met. So that's kind of how it works, and what the first steps are.
Okay. Well, what I want people to do, because I'm sure when you share this, there's going to be a lot of people that follow you that are potentially already your clients. Those questions that Eli asked you, ask yourself about other parts of your life and not just your nutrition. What are your goals? How do you define it? What are you going to do to accomplish that? What are your milestones? All those things that he's asking you about your nutrition will apply to every other element in your life. So you're helping people more than just with their nutrition if they pay attention.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We've had some, man. It's another thing that's been just so rewarding in this, and again, I've got really good coaches who also carry this culture forward, and they really believe in this with everything they've got. And they've sent me some testimonies and quotes they've received from people that it just makes you stop in your tracks. And it just, they're not even talking about specifically their body fat percentage loss, but how it's made them feel, how it's helped them overcome an area of depression in their life or a really hard season, or how it's changed their image of their identity. And you're like, it just makes you like take a step back and be like, what are we doing here? Like it just gives it a deeper weight to make you think more deeply about it and more serious. And like you are really affecting people's lives, and that's not something to play around with. So we want to do the absolute best we can to make sure that that's an impactful change in a positive direction. But yeah, it's some of the things we hear just, you're like, man, I never would have even dreamed that for people, but it's been awesome.
That's cool, man. Well, how can people find you? I know we'll have it in the show notes, but how can people find you?
Yeah, the Instagram is at E3 Nutrition. My personal is at Eli_Grambling. And on Facebook, my whole name is Alexander Eli Grambling. We just started a YouTube channel for E3 Nutrition, so we'll start posting on that. But yeah, Instagram is probably our most active social media right now. We have a Twitter, but I'm not really active on there. That's kind of something I was just playing around with. Not sure if that's going to be like an avenue for growth for us at the moment, but Instagram is probably where you can get the most content for free without being a part of the program, and really kind of tap into our culture and what we do, and gain a lot from that.
That's awesome. Well, what departing words will you leave the audience about their pathway to greatness?
I guess first I would just say thanks for having me on. And I don't think a lot of people are getting this transparent and real with themselves and with other people. So like I appreciate the fact that you host this and allow people to do that and share their story and how it may help others. But my parting words would be, you have to be real with yourself. And if you're not honest with yourself, like it goes back to my thing with country music, or just pursuing music, I guess. Like I always knew, like deep down, there was always a confliction and an inner, there was never a peace about it that I needed. And I had to be honest with myself before I could move past that. Once I did and actually allowed God to do what he planned on doing, it was greater than I could ask for or imagine. So that would be my parting words for greatness, is to understand, tap into what God has for you and expand on that, and really trust that and roll with it and look for peace. Once you find that, don't stop. You're not going to be motivated all the time. Take a small step, take a daily action, and get moving, because what you're doing, whether you see it, the fruit immediately or not, is impacting others. So
Well, I can't add anything to that other than thank you. I appreciate it, man. And I'm looking forward to building a friendship with you as well. I can tell that you definitely are cut from a different cloth in a good way. And I appreciate you a lot.
yeah, thank you so much for having me on.